Hello, Dave. How are you?
Today we're going to talk about, I guess, the geopolitical problems that Australia will face in the very near future. Joel Skousen is a political scientist and he's been publishing the World Affairs Brief for approximately 20 years. Very lucky to have you here. Welcome, Joel Skousen. So can you tell us a little bit about what's happening with North Korea and the effects that it might have on Australia?
I mean, this is all very much a political strategy to blame the war on some crazy guy in North Korea so they don't get the
Yes,
blame.
yeah.
He starts the war,
Mm.
okay?
Yeah.
It's a great strategy. But you see, Trump has threatened to pull this trigger too soon.
What if he does pull it too soon? Will America take back the South China Sea and the maritime trade there?
No, they won't. And I'll tell you why. The globalist strategists behind that are trying to work Trump over and control Trump. If there's a war in North Korea, which there will be if Trump strikes North Korea, you'll have a full-blown Korean war. It will be bloody, and America has very little tolerance now for another war in which you have a lot of casualties. And so his advisors will convince Trump to call a ceasefire before victory, just like in the first war. They'll call a ceasefire before Kim Jong. He's going to be damaged heavily. You know, his artillery is going to be destroyed. A lot of his missile forces. They may even de-nuke the thing by force, but they won't remove the communist government. And so, if they get Trump to call and get an anti-war movement again, like Vietnam, to stop the war in Korea, they'll preserve the trigger event for another time. You see, as long as you keep the communist government in power, even if you have a war, if you don't prosecute it to removing the communist government in the North, they can preserve the trigger event
Yeah.
for the middle of the next decade when they really need it. So the globalists can win even if Trump pulls the trigger too early.
Even if Trump pulls the trigger, just say in March, April, May, or even September, October, November, or even in the next 24 months, what do you think Russia and China's actions will be in the Asian region which could affect Australia?
Well, if there is a war, I don't believe, I'd say there's about a 20% chance they could go to war nuclear-wise against the United States, but only a 20%. 80% chance they will simply support North Korea with military hardware to make sure that it does not fall. And they'll continue to threaten the U.S. that if you attack us and our bases and our supply lines into North Korea, just like in Vietnam, you know, we had a full supply line from the Russians and the Chinese into North Vietnam, and they would say, you don't want to attack our ships or you'll start World War III. They'll play that same thing with Trump. And so I think what will happen, it'll be a stalemate of a war again. And that's why the globalists will talk Trump into, if there is a war, talk him into another.
So approximately after the war, just say there's a brief war, do you think Australia will be blockaded and our economy will suffer greatly during this period?
No, I do not. I think Australia will be fairly unscathed from a North Korean war. It will be on the side of the West, but you see, you've got to remember that China isn't ready to provoke a full Third World War with the West, so they won't attack Australia, even if it supports the war. They won't attack Canada. They won't attack the United States. They just don't want the full-scale war yet until they're ready.
So you don't think that China or Russia in Indonesia, they would blockade Australia at all? Our trade will continue, our access to Singapore's oil would continue, everything would continue as normal, and it would just be purely America and North Korea and South Korea, of course, do you think?
Yes, I think there's an 80% chance of that scenario, only a 20% chance that it could branch out into a Third World War. Now, this is important for Australians to remember. If there is a full-blown Third World War, a nuclear war, Australia is going to get occupied by China. They cannot allow a bastion, a huge continent like Australia, to be a base of operations to attack China from its rear. I mean, China has got to get a ring of pearl defensive set of bases, naval bases and island bases around through Indonesia. That's why they're really big into Indonesia, and that's why they're creating these island chains near the Philippines. Australia is too close to that. They've got to occupy. And besides, they bought up all the mineral concessions in Australia. Australia sold, stupidly, all of your mineral concessions to China. And so they got a right to come in and say, we got to guarantee our supply of minerals. We're going to occupy. So that's what Australians have to prepare for. Your government has sold you out in the sense of giving China every motivation to occupy your country. And so it's going to be guerrilla warfare against Chinese occupation, and that's what you've got to prepare for someday.
In occupation of Australia by China, that means that Australia would become a socialist government with a leader who is put in power by China.
It'd be a puppet government to China, like the French were a puppet government of the Nazis during World War II.
Okay.
I think there would be a resistance movement in Australia. And unfortunately, having gun control and having destroyed millions of weapons, it's not that easy to do a resistance against China that can flood that country with occupation troops. That's China's real strength, is they've got so many troops that they can send in to occupy.
Yeah.
And so, even though your countrymen, and I've got several subscribers in Australia, and they know this, that your countrymen are rather oblivious to this threat. They trust their government. They trust the United States that there won't be a war. The West is very, very soft in terms of its resolve against Russia and China. But, if they're smart, they'll prepare underground facilities where you stockpile supplies and weapons and have places to hide people. If you do that in advance, you can survive a Chinese occupation. I personally don't think that China will destroy Australia. And the reason I say that is, number one, they want to keep the economy intact and milk it. Yes, my website is worldaffairsbrief.com, and people listening can get a free sample issue of my World Affairs Brief, which is by subscription. So there's a free sample issue by simply emailing me at editor@worldaffairsbrief.com. And you can find me by Googling Joel Skousen at any time, and I've got a lot of videos and recordings of my interviews with Alex Jones and Jeff Renz and Coast to Coast and many other national outlets.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Joel Skousen. Your links will be in the description. They'll be the top links in the description. Also, if you like this video, click the subscribe button, click the like button, and no doubt I'll be seeing you guys in the next video in the next couple of days. Don't let fear stop you. Thank you very much, Joel Skousen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave.